For 12 years, a wanted man slept in a children's dormitory, not in a cave, not on the run across the country, in a four-poster bed in Gryffindor Tower, curled up on a boy's pillow, fed scraps from his hand, carried to class in a coat pocket like nothing at all. And there was one object inside that castle that could have screamed his real name to anyone holding it. One. Most people, when they notice this at all, just shrug and say the same comfortable thing. The map was locked away, so it never got the chance. That answer is comforting. It's also wrong, and what's actually true is so much worse, because the map was never the thing that failed. So we're going to do something simple. We're going to take that comfortable answer, the locked drawer one, and test it against the actual timeline year by year until it falls apart in your hands. And by the end, you'll see the real reason a killer lived in that tower for over a decade without anyone catching him. It isn't that he was hidden well, it's the opposite. To understand the horror, you have to understand exactly what the Marauders map is, because it isn't a map of corridors, it's a map of people. J.K. Rowling has been clear about how it works. The map runs on something called the Homonculous Charm, and that charm tracks the movement of every single person inside Hogwarts in real time. Not their disguise, not their cover story, them. As the official record puts it, the map was never fooled by invisibility cloaks, by Polyjuice potion, or by Animagi. Three of the most powerful forms of concealment in the entire wizarding world, and the map sees straight through all of them. And we're not taking that on faith because the books show it happening. In Goblet of Fire, Harry glances at the map and spots a dot labeled Bartemius Crouch, standing in Snape's office. The problem is, the man wearing that name was at that point walking the castle as Professor Moody, a Death Eater named Barty Crouch Jr., drinking Polyjuice potion by the flask to hold the disguise. The potion fooled every human eye in the building for an entire year. It did not fool the parchment. The map printed who he really was. The same is true of the invisibility cloak, an object so rare it's literally one of the deathly Hallows. Throw it over yourself and you vanish from the world. You do not vanish from the map. It still prints your name, plain as day, gliding across the page, so the map sees through a cloak, it sees through Polyjuice. The only question left is whether it can see through a rat. It can. And we know that for a single chilling reason, it already did. Near the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, Remus Lupin is sitting in his office watching the map. He's tracking Harry, who's slipping out toward Hagrid's hut. And then he sees something that stops him cold, a name on the parchment that should not exist. A name belonging to a man everyone believed had been dead for 12 years, Peter Pettigrew. At that exact moment, Pettigrew wasn't standing there as a man. He was a rat. A small, gray, unremarkable rat, scurrying along beside the children, looking like nothing more than a runaway pet. Every person who glanced at that scene would have seen an animal. The map saw the man inside it. Now, be careful here, because this is the line where lazy theories overreach. That one moment doesn't prove the map was broadcasting his name on a loop, every hour of every day, while he slept in a tower. What it proves is what the map was capable of. On at least one night, with Pettigrew in his deepest, most convincing disguise, a disguise he'd worn so long the world had stopped questioning it, the parchment looked at a rat and wrote down a human name. The true name. The dangerous one. So the tool worked. The capability was real, and it was sitting right there in the castle. Which forces a question with a genuinely unsettling answer. Who exactly was the rat? His name was Peter Pettigrew. And to understand why a name on a piece of parchment is terrifying, you have to understand what this man had done. Pettigrew grew up alongside James Potter, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin. One of four friends, the smallest and the least remarkable of the group. And when it mattered most, he betrayed them. He handed the Potters to Voldemort. He sold the location of his closest friends to the man who murdered them. Then, to save himself, he faked his own death, framed Sirius for the crime, blew apart a street full of bystanders, and vanished. The world believed Peter Pettigrew died a hero that day. The only piece of him anyone could find to bury was a single severed finger, which, it turns out, he had cut from his own hand before he ran. Everyone moved on, but he didn't die. He shrank. Pettigrew was a secret, unregistered Animagus, able to turn himself into a rat at will with no record of it anywhere. So that's what he became. Permanently. And when it all finally unravels years later in the Shrieking Shack, it's Sirius who says the line out loud, half in fury and half in disbelief. "The map never lies! Pettigrew's alive!" Everyone in that room remembered Scabbers as the lazy, decrepit, missing-a-toe family pet, and that missing toe should have been the tell, because it's the matching half of the finger left at a murder scene 12 years earlier, but nobody connected it. Useless, forgettable, nothing to see here, that was the disguise. Nobody hunts for a monster in a child's pocket. And it's not just who he was that should make your skin crawl, it's where he chose to wait it out. For years he belonged to the Weasleys, and when Ron Weasley came to Hogwarts, Pettigrew came with him, carried up to the boys' dormitory in Gryffindor Tower, set down on a bed, left to sleep on the pillow. For the years Ron carried that rat up those stairs, a man who had sold his own friends to their deaths, slept 3 feet from 4 sleeping boys. He ate at their table, he sat in their classes, he was held, petted, named, and every one of those nights the one object that could have written his real name in plain ink was somewhere in the same castle, and nobody read it, so why not? Why did the single tool built to expose exactly this kind of lie never once expose it? Everyone gives the same answer. Let's actually test it. The answer everyone reaches for is the simple one. The map was locked away. It couldn't expose anybody because nobody had it. And for a while, that's true. Go back to the beginning. The map was made by the 4 friends during their own school days, and in their final year it was confiscated. Argus Filch caught them, took it, and shut it inside a filing cabinet in his office. A drawer labeled, with grim accuracy, "Confiscated and highly dangerous." And there it sat. The 4 people who knew how to work it had left the school. To everyone else, it was a dead blank piece of parchment. Useless. So picture those years honestly. The one weapon in the entire castle that could name a hidden killer, sealed in a cabinet, gathering dust, slowly fading into a rumor the staff had half forgotten. It wasn't guarding anyone, it wasn't watching anyone, it was just waiting, in the dark, while the man it could have exposed waited too. It's a genuinely chilling image. It's also, if we're honest, a weaker explanation than it first looks. Because here's the crack. For most of those locked away years, the rat wasn't even at Hogwarts. Pettigrew didn't start out as Ron's pet. He was Percy Weasley's first, and before the boys were old enough for school, that rat lived at the Weasley home. The Burrow, miles away. And the Marauders map is a map of one place. Hogwarts. It cannot show you a rat sitting in a kitchen in the countryside. During the very years it was locked in Filch's drawer, the thing it supposedly failed to catch wasn't even in the building, so the locked drawer answer only really covers the years that barely mattered. The terrifying stretch is the one where the map wasn't locked away at all. Here's where the comfortable answer dies completely. Because the map didn't stay in that drawer. In their very first year at Hogwarts, Fred and George Weasley were hauled into Filch's office, spotted that confiscated and highly dangerous drawer, set off a dung bomb as a distraction, and stole the blank parchment inside. And being who they were, they cracked it. They figured out the words. They woke it back up. And from that moment on, the map wasn't sleeping in the dark anymore. It was alive and in daily use. Inside the school, carried around by students, consulted constantly. Fred and George swore it had taught them more than every teacher in the school combined. They called it the secret of their success. Now hold both facts together. The map is now awake, in active circulation, inside Hogwarts. And living inside that exact same castle, sleeping in the exact same tower, is Pettigrew. Because by now the rat has been handed down to Ron. And Ron isn't just any student. Ron shares a dormitory with the boys the map travels with. Ron is inseparable from Harry. And eventually the twins hand the map to Harry directly. So follow the geography. The object that prints a fugitive's true name and the fugitive himself are now in the same building, the same house, often the same room, passed between the same small circle of hands for years. Think about what that actually means. We can't say the rat's name was glowing on that page every minute of every night. That's not how we've seen the map work, but we can say this. Every single time someone in that tower unfolded the map and spoke the words, the chance was right there. The trap was armed and loaded over and over for years. All it ever needed was for one person to look at the right corner and recognize one name. And nobody did. Not once. For years. The most dangerous name in Britain, one glance away from a room full of people, and every pair of eyes pointed somewhere else. And if you think that's just a clever reading, a fan stretching a detail too far, the films don't just imply it. One of them put it right on screen for you. In the third film, there's a quiet nighttime scene. Harry has the map open, alone, watching the dots drift across the parchment, and a name floats into view that shouldn't be there at all. Peter Pettigrew. It moves across the corridor, plain as anything, right in front of him. The map is doing exactly what it was built to do, naming the dead man who isn't dead in the moment he's closest. And then Harry is interrupted, the moment breaks, and the name slips away unread. Think about what that scene is telling you. The story was so confident the map would catch Pettigrew that the filmmakers staged the near miss on purpose. They showed you the trap working, a true name surfacing on the page, a name that should have ended everything right there, and then showed you exactly how it gets missed. Not because the magic failed, because the person holding it was looking at something else, so the map was there, the name was there, we can see it. Which leaves the one question we've been circling this whole time. If the tool worked, and the name was readable, and it was sitting in the right hands for years, why did no one ever catch it? The answer comes from the one person who would actually know. Here's the assumption we've all been making without noticing. We assume that surely somewhere in those years, somebody would have glanced at the map, seen an unfamiliar adult name drifting through a boy's dormitory, and thought, that's strange. Surely one curious look was all it would ever have taken. J.K. Rowling was asked this exact question. Why didn't Fred and George, who used the map constantly, ever notice Peter Pettigrew on it? And her answer is the most unsettling part of this entire story because it has nothing to do with a locked drawer. She explained that it wouldn't have mattered even if they'd seen the name. Fred and George had no reason to know that Peter Pettigrew meant anything. To them it was just a string of letters, no different from any other. They used the map for mischief, so their eyes went only to the corners they cared about, the passages out, the shortcuts, wherever they were planning their next trick. And here's the detail that should stay with you. She pointed out that there are hundreds of little dots moving across that map at any given moment. The twins didn't know every name in the school, so a single unfamiliar one was never going to leap out. Let that land! The reason the killer was never caught isn't that the evidence was hidden. The evidence was right there in plain ink for years. He was never caught because nobody was reading the map that way. Nobody was looking for a name. They were looking at a map of shortcuts that happened to also be a map of a fugitive, and they only ever saw the shortcuts. The author didn't say the map was locked away. She said the name was meaningless to the people holding it, and that flips the whole horror on its head. So put the real story together, and it comes in two stages, two completely different failures that happen to share one outcome. First, the map slept, locked in a drawer for years, blank and forgotten, while the rat lived far away from the only place it could ever have seen him. That stage was an accident of timing, bad luck. Then the map woke up. It came roaring back into daily use, traveling through the exact tower where the fugitive slept, passing through the exact hands closest to him. The capability was switched back on. The opportunity was perfect. And it still failed. Not because it was hidden, but because the people holding the answer didn't know it was an answer. Stage 1 was a locked drawer. Stage 2 was an open page that no one knew how to read. One outcome. A killer, undetected for over a decade. So here's the detail you missed. The horror was never that the map couldn't catch him. It could, by name, instantly, the second anyone truly looked. The reason it didn't isn't a locked drawer and it isn't a clever disguise. It's that the most dangerous things don't hide in the dark. They sit in plain sight, labeled and dull, 3 feet from your hand, in a name nobody bothers to read. Peter Pettigrew didn't survive 12 years because he was hidden well. He survived because he was boring. A grubby, forgotten pet and 100 drifting dots are exactly the kind of thing the eye slides straight past. He understood something the whole castle forgot, that the safest place to hide isn't the shadows. It's in the open, dressed as something not worth a second glance. The map never lied. It offered up his name, day after day after day. There was just never anyone listening. which leaves one thing to sit with. Lupin only caught it because on one specific night his eyes happened to land on the right corner of the parchment. If they drifted an inch, if he'd looked away a second sooner, Pettigrew slips away again, and everything that came after plays out differently. All of it hanging on whether one exhausted man read one name. Maybe the scariest object in that castle was never the map. It was every single person who held it and didn't look. If this changed how you see that scene, subscribe. I pull one overlooked detail out of the wizarding world in every video. And drop me a comment, what's the detail you think everyone walks straight past? There are a couple I keep coming back to.